The Enlightenment. Origin and history. Time period. The Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason, emerged in the late 17th century and reached its height in the 18th century. Roots. Its roots can be traced to the scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries, which emphasized empirical evidence and scientific methods. Geography. The movement began in Europe, particularly in France, Britain, and Germany, before spreading across the continent into the American colonies. Concept and definition. The Enlightenment was an intellectual and philosophical movement that championed reason, individualism, and skepticism of traditional doctrines. Key ideas included the belief in progress, the power of human reason, and the importance of science and education in improving society. Features. Reason. Emphasis on rational thought and empirical evidence. Skepticism. Questioning of religious and traditional authority. Individualism. Focus on individual rights and autonomy. Secularism. Separation of church and state. Emphasis on non-religious worldviews. Optimism. Belief in human progress and the perfectibility of society through knowledge and reform. Pioneering figures. Voltaire, 1694–1778, criticized the Catholic Church and advocated for freedom of speech and religion. John Locke, 1632–1704, developed theories of government based on the social contract and natural rights. Immanuel Kant, 1724–1804, promoted the idea of sapere aude, dare to know, and autonomy of reason. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, 1712–1778, argued for the natural goodness of humans and the importance of education and direct democracy. Texts. Candide, by Voltaire, a satirical novel that criticizes optimism and organized religion. Two Treatises of Government, by John Locke, outlines theories of civil society and the social contract. Critique of Pure Reason, by Immanuel Kant, explores the limits and scope of human understanding. The Social Contract, by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, examines the principles of political rights and the legitimacy of government. Contribution and impact. Political revolutions. Ideas from the Enlightenment influenced the American Revolution, 1775–1783, and the French Revolution, 1789–1799. Modern democracy. Concepts of liberty, equality, and fraternity became foundational to modern democratic societies. Scientific progress. Encouraged the advancement of science and the development of the scientific method. Human rights. Laid the groundwork for modern human rights and individual freedoms. Neoclassicism. Origin and history. Time period. Neoclassicism emerged in the mid-18th century and continued into the early 19th century. Roots. It was inspired by the classical art and culture of ancient Greece and Rome, reacting against the excesses of Baroque and Rococo styles. Geography. Originated in Europe, especially in Italy, France, and Britain, and spread to America. Concept and definition. Neoclassicism is an artistic and cultural movement that sought to revive the classical ideals of harmony, simplicity, and proportion. It emphasized clarity, order, and balance, often drawing directly from classical literature and mythology. Features. Simplicity and symmetry. Focus on clean lines, minimal ornamentation, and balanced compositions. Classical themes. Use of subjects from ancient history, mythology, and literature. Moral seriousness. Art was often intended to convey moral messages and promote virtuous behavior. Formal structure. Emphasis on structured forms and disciplined expressions. Pioneering figures. Jacques-Louis David, 1748–1825, French painter known for his classical style and politically charged works like The Death of Socrates. Johann Joachim Winckelmann, 1717–1768, art historian whose writings on ancient art helped shape neoclassical aesthetics. Antonio Canova, 1757–1822, Italian sculptor celebrated for his marble sculptures that epitomized neoclassical ideals. Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, 1780–1867, French painter noted for his precision and classical themes. Texts. The History of Ancient Art, by Johann Joachim Winckelmann, a foundational text that praised the art of ancient Greece and Rome and set the tone for neoclassical aesthetics. Oisin, by James Macpherson, poems purportedly translated from ancient Scottish works that influenced neoclassical literature. The Sorrows of Young Werther, by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Although often associated with Romanticism, it also reflects neoclassical values in its structure and themes. Contribution and impact. Cultural revival. Neoclassicism revived interest in classical antiquity and influenced the visual arts, architecture, literature, and music. Architectural landmarks. Inspired iconic buildings like the Pantheon in Paris and the United States Capitol. Artistic standards. Established enduring principles: beauty, harmony, and proportion in the arts. Political symbolism. Frequently associated with the values of the Enlightenment and the political ideals of republicanism and democracy. Conclusion. The Enlightenment and Neoclassicism were pivotal movements in Western history, shaping modern thought, politics, art, and culture. The Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, individualism, and progress laid the intellectual groundwork for modern democratic societies, while Neoclassicism's revival of classical ideals influenced artistic and architectural standards that continue to resonate today. Differences between the Enlightenment and Neoclassicism. 1. Nature and focus. Enlightenment. Nature, primarily an intellectual and philosophical movement. Focus. Emphasized reason, science, skepticism, and individualism. It sought to reform society using rational thought and empirical evidence. Neoclassicism. Nature, an artistic and cultural movement. Focus. Focused on reviving the art, culture, and aesthetics of ancient Greece and Rome. It emphasized order, clarity, and classical themes in art, architecture, and literature. 2. Key concepts. Enlightenment. Rationalism, empiricism, skepticism of tradition and authority, progress, and the scientific method. Neoclassicism. Harmony, simplicity, symmetry, moral seriousness, and adherence to classical forms and subjects. 3. Leading figures. Enlightenment. Philosophers and thinkers such as Voltaire, John Locke, Immanuel Kant, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Neoclassicism. Artists and scholars such as Jacques-Louis David, Johann Joachim Winckelmann, Antonio Canova, and Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. 4. Impact and areas of influence. Enlightenment. Impacted political thought, social reform, education, and the development of modern sciences. Neoclassicism. Influenced the visual arts, literature, architecture, and cultural expressions, often seen in public monuments and institutional buildings. Similarities between the Enlightenment and Neoclassicism. 1. Time period. Both movements flourished during the 18th century and overlapped in their historical timelines, influencing each other. 2. Reaction against previous eras. Enlightenment. Reacted against the dogmatism and superstition of the Middle Ages and the excesses of the Baroque and Rococo periods. Neoclassicism. Reacted against the ornate and elaborate styles of the Baroque and Rococo, seeking a return to the perceived purity and simplicity of classical antiquity. 3. Emphasis on rationality and order. Both movements valued rationality, order, and structure, though applied in different contexts: philosophical thought for the Enlightenment and artistic expression for Neoclassicism. 4. Influence on modern thought and aesthetics. Both movements have had a lasting impact on modern Western thought and aesthetics. The Enlightenment laid the groundwork for contemporary political and scientific thinking, while Neoclassicism influenced modern architecture, art, and cultural values. 5. Shared figures and ideas. Some figures and ideas overlapped between the two movements. For instance, the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason and individualism found expression in neoclassical art's focus on moral seriousness and clarity. Summary. While the Enlightenment and Neoclassicism differ in their primary focus and forms of expression, they share a commitment to rationality, order, and a reaction against the excesses of previous cultural and intellectual eras. Both have played crucial roles in shaping modern Western culture, thought, and aesthetics. Main arguments of the Enlightenment. 1. Emphasis on reason and rational thought. Argument. Enlightenment thinkers argued that human reason and rational thought should be the primary sources of knowledge and truth, rather than religious dogma or superstition. Example. Immanuel Kant's essay, What is Enlightenment? Advocates for the use of reason in understanding and improving society, famously stating, Sapere ad, dare to know. 2. Critique of traditional authority. Argument. Enlightenment philosophers criticize the authority of the monarchy and the church, promoting ideas of democracy, secularism, and individual rights. Example. Voltaire's writings, such as Candide, satirized the corruption and hypocrisy of the church and state, advocating for freedom of thought and expression. 3. Advocacy for individual rights and freedoms. Argument. The Enlightenment promoted the idea that all individuals are entitled to certain natural rights, such as life, liberty, and property. Example: John Locke's Two Treatises of Government argued that government should protect individuals' natural rights and that rulers should be accountable to the people. 4. Belief in progress and human perfectibility. Argument: Enlightenment thinkers believed that through education, science, and rational reforms, society could progress and improve. Example: the Encyclopédie, edited by Denis Diderot and Jean-Laurent D'Alembert, aimed to gather and disseminate knowledge to educate and enlighten society, reflecting the belief in progress through learning. 5. Emphasis on empirical evidence and the scientific method. Argument: the Enlightenment emphasized the importance of observation, experimentation, and empirical evidence in acquiring knowledge. Example: Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica demonstrated how scientific methods could be used to understand and explain natural phenomena, laying the groundwork for modern physics. Main arguments of Neoclassicism. 1. Revival of classical ideals. Argument: Neoclassicism aimed to revive the artistic principles of ancient Greece and Rome, emphasizing harmony, simplicity, and proportion. Example: Jacques-Louis David's painting, The Oath of the Horatii, reflects classical themes of duty and sacrifice, with clear lines and structured composition. 2. Moral and didactic purpose of art. Argument: Neoclassical art and literature were often intended to teach moral lessons and promote virtuous behavior. Example: Antonio Canova's sculpture, Perseus with the Head of Medusa, combines classical beauty with moral storytelling, illustrating the triumph of good over evil. 3. Emphasis on symmetry and order. Argument: Neoclassical artists and architects valued symmetry, order, and clarity in their works, drawing inspiration from classical forms. Example: the architecture of the United States Capitol building in Washington, D.C., reflects neoclassical ideals with its symmetrical design, columns, and domed roof. 4. Focus on classical subjects and themes. Argument: Neoclassical works often depicted scenes from ancient history, mythology, and literature, emphasizing timeless human experiences and virtues. Example: Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres' painting, The Apotheosis of Homer, celebrates the ancient Greek poet Homer, surrounded by personifications of his epic poems and famous figures from classical antiquity. 5. Reaction against Baroque and Rococo styles. Argument: Neoclassicism emerged as a reaction against the ornate and elaborate styles of the Baroque and Rococo periods, advocating for a return to simplicity and restraint. Example: the restrained elegance of neoclassical architecture, as seen in buildings like the Pantheon in Paris, contrasts sharply with the decorative exuberance of Rococo interiors. Conclusion: both the Enlightenment and Neoclassicism sought to reform and improve society through their respective approaches. The Enlightenment did so through reason, science, and critiques of authority, while Neoclassicism looked to the past for artistic inspiration, emphasizing classical ideals and moral lessons. Each movement, in its way, contributed to shaping modern Western thought and aesthetics. Relevance, significance, and legacy of the Enlightenment and Neoclassicism. The Enlightenment. Past. Revolutionary ideas. The Enlightenment laid the intellectual groundwork for significant political revolutions, such as the American Revolution 1775-1783 and the French Revolution 1789-1799. Its emphasis on individual rights, democracy, and secularism profoundly changed governance and society. Scientific advancements. The Enlightenment encouraged the scientific method, leading to groundbreaking discoveries and advancements in various fields such as physics, biology, and chemistry. Present. Modern democracies. Many contemporary political systems and constitutions are based on Enlightenment principles. Concepts like human rights, freedom of speech, and separation of powers are central to democratic governance today. Educational systems. The Enlightenment's emphasis on reason and empirical evidence continues to influence educational philosophies and methods, promoting critical thinking and scientific inquiry. Future. Global human rights. The legacy of the Enlightenment continues to inform global human rights movements, advocating for equality, freedom, and justice. Technological and scientific progress. As society advances, the Enlightenment's focus on rational thought and empirical research will likely continue to drive innovation and problem-solving. Legacy. Philosophical foundations. the Enlightenment provided a foundation for modern philosophy, influencing thinkers and movements that followed, such as Romanticism, existentialism, and postmodernism. Cultural impact. Enlightenment ideas permeated literature, art, and culture, fostering a spirit of inquiry and skepticism that continues to shape intellectual and cultural discourse. Neoclassicism. Past. Artistic revival. Neoclassicism revived classical art and architecture, emphasizing order, symmetry, and simplicity. This movement provided a counterbalance to the ornate Baroque and Rococo styles, influencing artistic standards and aesthetics. Public architecture. Neoclassical architecture became the preferred style for public buildings and monuments, symbolizing civic virtue and democratic ideals. Examples include the United States Capitol and the British Museum. Present. Enduring influence in art and architecture. Neoclassical principles continue to be evident in contemporary architecture and design, with a focus on symmetry, proportion, and classical elements. Cultural heritage. Neoclassicism's emphasis on classical education, the study of ancient cultures, remains an important part of the humanities curriculum in educational institutions. Future. Sustainability and heritage conservation. The future of neoclassicism lies in the sustainable preservation of its architectural and artistic heritage, integrating modern techniques with classical aesthetics. Timeless aesthetics. As design trends evolve, the timeless appeal of neoclassical aesthetics is likely to continue influencing architects and designers seeking to balance modern innovation with classical beauty. Legacy. Artistic standards. Neoclassicism established enduring standards of beauty, harmony, and proportion that continue to influence art and architecture. Cultural relevance. By drawing on the rich heritage of classical antiquity, neoclassicism fostered a deep appreciation for historical continuity and cultural identity. Summary. Relevance and significance. The Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, individual rights, and empirical evidence remains foundational to modern democratic societies and scientific inquiry. Neoclassicism's revival of classical ideals continues to influence contemporary art, architecture, and cultural education. Legacy. The Enlightenment and neoclassicism have left indelible marks on Western thought, culture, and aesthetics. Their principles and values continue to shape intellectual, political, and artistic landscapes. Both movements highlight the importance of critical thinking, cultural heritage, and the pursuit of knowledge and beauty, ensuring their relevance for future generations. Analysis, examination, and discussion of the Enlightenment and neoclassicism. The Enlightenment. Analysis. Intellectual shift. The Enlightenment represented a major shift from a faith-based worldview to one rooted in reason and empirical evidence. This intellectual transition was pivotal in moving away from medieval scholasticism and towards modern scientific and philosophical inquiry. Human rights. By advocating for natural rights and social contracts, Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau laid the groundwork for modern democratic institutions. Their ideas about governance and individual liberty continue to influence contemporary political systems. Critical thinking. The movement's emphasis on skepticism and questioning authority encouraged critical thinking and intellectual independence, fostering an environment where innovation and progress could thrive. Examination. Impact on revolutions. The Enlightenment's ideas directly influenced the American and French revolutions, leading to the establishment of republics and the spread of democratic ideals. The Declaration of Independence and the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen are testaments to the enduring influence of Enlightenment philosophy. Scientific advancements. Figures like Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei exemplify the Enlightenment's impact on science. The period saw significant advancements in understanding the natural world, leading to the development of the scientific method that remains fundamental to scientific research today. Educational reforms. The Enlightenment emphasized the importance of education as a means to enlightenment and societal progress. This led to the founding of educational institutions and reforms aimed at broadening access to knowledge. Discussion. Contemporary relevance. Today, Enlightenment principles underpin much of our political and scientific thinking. Debates about human rights, secularism, and the role of science in society are direct continuations of Enlightenment discourse. Challenges and critiques. While the Enlightenment championed universal rights and reason, its legacy is not without controversy. Critics argue that it often ignored the voices and rights of women, indigenous peoples, and non-Europeans. The period's emphasis on rationality has also been critiqued for potentially devaluing emotional and subjective experiences. Comments. Balancing rationality and emotion. A more nuanced view of the Enlightenment recognizes the importance of balancing rational thought with emotional intelligence, acknowledging the limitations of a purely rationalist perspective. Inclusive human rights. Modern interpretations of Enlightenment ideals strive for a more inclusive approach to human rights, ensuring that the principles of equality and freedom apply universally. Neoclassicism. Analysis. Artistic revival. Neoclassicism sought to return to the perceived purity and simplicity of ancient Greek and Roman art. This was both a reaction against the excesses of Baroque and Rococo styles and an expression of contemporary ideals of order and rationality. Moral and didactic art. Neoclassical art often carried moral and didactic messages, promoting virtues such as patriotism, duty, and civic responsibility. This reflected the Enlightenment's emphasis on moral improvement and societal progress. Examination. Architectural influence. Neoclassical architecture became the dominant style for public buildings, symbolizing democratic ideals and civic virtue. The use of columns, domes, and symmetrical designs in buildings like the United States Capitol reflects this influence. Cultural symbolism. Neoclassicism's adoption of classical themes and forms served as a cultural statement, aligning contemporary societies with the values and achievements of ancient civilizations. Discussion. Enduring aesthetics. The timeless appeal of neoclassical aesthetics continues to influence contemporary architecture and design. The principles of symmetry, proportion, and simplicity resonate with modern sensibilities, balancing tradition with innovation. Cultural heritage. Preserving neoclassical architecture and art is crucial for maintaining cultural heritage. These works serve as a bridge between past and present, offering insights into historical values and artistic practices. Comments. Integration with modern design. The challenge for contemporary architects and designers is to integrate neoclassical principles with modern materials and technologies, creating spaces that are both functional and aesthetically pleasing. Evolving interpretations. As our understanding of history evolves, so too does our interpretation of neoclassical art and architecture. This ongoing reinterpretation ensures that the movement remains relevant and dynamic. Conclusion. Relevance and significance. The Enlightenment and neoclassicism both played crucial roles in shaping modern Western thought, culture, and aesthetics. Their emphasis on reason, individual rights, and classical ideals continues to influence contemporary society. Legacy. The enduring legacy of these movements is seen in the continued importance of democratic principles, scientific inquiry, and artistic standards that balance tradition with modernity. Both movements highlight the importance of intellectual and cultural heritage, ensuring their ongoing relevance for future generations. Analysis, examination, and discussion of the Enlightenment and neoclassicism in the context of English literature. The Enlightenment in English literature. Analysis. Rationalism and satire. English literature during the Enlightenment period often focused on rationalism, social criticism, and satire. Writers used these tools to challenge traditional authority and promote reason and progress. Philosophical themes. Enlightenment literature explored themes such as individual rights, the nature of government, and the pursuit of knowledge. These themes were reflected in the essays, novels, and poems of the period. Examination. Key figures and works. John Locke. His works, particularly, an essay concerning human understanding, influenced contemporary thought on knowledge and individual rights. Jonathan Swift. Gulliver's Travels, and A Modest Proposal, used satire to critique society and human folly. Alexander Pope. An Essay on Man, and The Rape of the Lock, combined poetic elegance with philosophical depth, exploring human nature and societal norms. Mary Wollstonecraft. A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, argued for women's rights and education, reflecting Enlightenment ideals of equality and rationality. Discussion. Impact on modern literature. The Enlightenment's emphasis on reason and criticism laid the groundwork for modern literary forms that explore complex social and philosophical issues. The use of satire and social commentary continues to be a powerful tool in contemporary literature. Challenges and critiques. While Enlightenment literature championed progress and rationality, it often excluded marginalized voices, such as women and non-European cultures. Modern scholars critique this exclusion and seek to broaden the literary canon to include diverse perspectives. Comments. Evolving interpretations. Contemporary interpretations of Enlightenment literature emphasize the importance of inclusivity and diversity. This involves re-evaluating traditional texts through different lenses and exploring previously marginalized voices. Neoclassicism in English literature. Analysis. Return to classical forms. Neoclassical literature in England sought to emulate the styles and themes of ancient Greek and Roman literature. This period emphasized order, clarity, and decorum in literary expression. Moral and didactic purposes. Neoclassical writers often used their works to teach moral lessons and promote virtuous behavior, reflecting the broader cultural values of the time. Examination. Key figures and works. John Dryden. As a leading figure of the neoclassical movement, Dryden's works, including Absalom and Achitophel, and Mac Flecknoe, demonstrated a mastery of classical forms and themes. Alexander Pope. His mock epic, The Rape of the Lock, and the Poetic Essays, an essay on criticism, and an essay on man, exemplify neoclassical aesthetics and moral instruction. Samuel Johnson. His Lives of the Poets, and The Vanity of Human Wishes, highlight the moral and didactic aims of neoclassical literature. Discussion. Impact on literary forms. Neoclassicism influenced the development of literary forms such as the heroic couplet and the mock epic. These forms emphasized precision, balance, and wit, setting high standards for literary craftsmanship. Legacy and influence. The legacy of neoclassicism can be seen in the continued appreciation for classical themes and forms in English literature. Modern writers often draw on neoclassical principles to create works that balance traditional aesthetics with contemporary concerns. Comments. Contemporary relevance. Neoclassical literature's focus on order and clarity continues to resonate in an age where complexity and ambiguity are often celebrated. By revisiting these texts, readers can gain insights into the enduring value of literary tradition and moral discourse. Conclusion. Relevance and significance in English literature. The Enlightenment. English literature during the Enlightenment championed reason, individual rights, and social critique, laying the groundwork for modern literary exploration of social and philosophical themes. Key figures like Jonathan Swift and Mary Wollstonecraft challenged societal norms and advocated for progress and equality. Neoclassicism. The neoclassical movement in English literature emphasized order, clarity, and moral instruction, drawing on classical models to create works of lasting beauty and significance. Writers like Alexander Pope and Samuel Johnson set high standards for literary craftsmanship and intellectual rigor. Legacy. The Enlightenment and neoclassicism have left a lasting impact on English literature, shaping its themes, forms, and values. Their principles continue to influence contemporary literary practice, ensuring that the exploration of reason, morality, and classical aesthetics remains relevant and dynamic. As literature evolves, the insights and contributions of these movements provide a foundation for ongoing critical and creative engagement.